Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. We have a great show for you today. First, more information on the expert notices in the Bryan Kohberger matter. No Christmas bonus. One woman says, hold my beer. Another mentally ill man commits more crime in New York. Let's talk looting. And another example of why neighbor disputes are so dangerous. This day in legal history and our dumb criminal of the day. Let's talk about it.
All right, lawyer.
Good day, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below, hit that little bell for notifications, and yes, you can check us out on any of your favorite podcasting apps. Now, before we get to the show, please go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for that background subscription service today. Ladies and gentlemen, information is power. You need to go and check out people that are coming into your life to make sure they are not a danger to you, or if they have done something bad so that you can be prepared. Make sure it doesn't happen to you. So when you go to crimetalksearch.com, you can do as many background searches as your little heart desires while you have that subscription, and you can cancel at any time. So whether you want to do one search or 10,000 searches, crimetalksearch.com is for you. Go there, sign up. You're going to be happy that you did. All right, let's go ahead and get to the docket for January 13th, 2025. First, Bryan Kohberger. Finally, we're getting a little bit closer. I can feel the momentum building. We're getting to those motions hearing type things. We're getting to the expert disclosure stuff, ladies and gentlemen. It's coming. All right. So prosecutors in the case against Bryan Kohberger, obviously the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students, may call more than 24 expert witnesses in a host of subject areas, including DNA, cell phone, geolocation, and crime scene reconstruction to try and prove Bryan Kohberger is in fact the guilty party beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, none of the state's experts detailed to the defense last month in a sealed court filing previously disclosed to the public. None of the state's experts provided any detailed explanation as they were filed under sealed and they've been recently disclosed to the public. But the prosecutors identified a handful that they planned to call as witnesses at trial. And in a newly released legal brief, we get a little more information. Now, the filing reads that 2 FBI agents are among the 25 potential expert witnesses for the prosecution. First is Special Agent Nick Balance, a member of the FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey Team. He is going to offer his opinion about where investigators allege Bryan Kohberger's cell phone was at different times before and after the quadruple homicide took place there in Idaho. Special Agent Tony Imel, a video identification expert, will testify about how he settled on the suspect's vehicle as a white Hyundai Elantra. Bryan Kohberger owned a 2015 version of the sedan. In addition, the Latah County coroner, Kathy Mabbitt, who has been in elected office since 2006, is also listed as a possible expert witness. She issued the 4 victims' death certificates and oversaw the autopsy performed by the Spokane Medical Examiner's Office. Now, Mabbitt has over 40 years of experience as a registered nurse, and the prosecution wrote and works as a criminal defense attorney in Moscow. The filing read that the others, still unnamed experts, are expected to speak to the toxicology results of the 4 students. The victims were each out late in the evening of with friends before the early morning knife attack back in November of 2022 at an off-campus home there in Moscow, Idaho. So now the defense is requesting a delay in the deadline for its own experts because the prosecution was somewhat delayed in providing theirs. Now, as you may recall, the Moscow police forensic detective Lawrence Mowry filed most of the search warrants in the investigation and is listed among the prosecution's likely witnesses. He is one of up to 3 law enforcement members specializing in obtaining and analyzing digital evidence and may be asked to testify. They disclosed that an unnamed crime scene expert specializing in reconstruction and bloodstain pattern analysis will also appear during the prosecution's portion of the trial. In addition, as many as 11 experts related to the Idaho State Police Crime Lab located in Meridian will be called as well. Now, each may speak to the specific lab reports, according to the disclosure filed by the prosecution. According to a recent defense filing, the state's expert witness list is 400 pages. Most of the contents are curriculum vitae or CVs, fancy word for resume, for the named experts, but with a few exceptions, including limited details about their opinions anticipated at trial. And so the defense thinks they are not specific enough. The prosecution disputes that. Guess what? A judge will decide if the disclosures are sufficient enough. Now, here's the thing. If the prosecution doesn't provide enough detail in their reports, their experts are limited to it. You can't just get up there and opine on the stand if it's not in the expert report. So prosecution better get it right. Now, Kohberger's attorneys are seeking sanctions against the prosecution for not fulfilling the demands under the Idaho criminal rules, and they ask that their January 23rd deadline to turn over their expert witness list be pushed back. Now, Rylene Nolan, who has worked at the Idaho State Lab for more than 20 years, including as a manager of the past decade, is the only one of the group of the state's forensic DNA experts identifying by name in the prosecution's latest filing. Prosecutors wrote that she is expected to testify to secondary transfer, or the process by which DNA can pass from one person to another object or another person. Investigators found the leather sheath for a K-bar knife on the bed of one of the victims next to her body, according to the police. And the Idaho Crime Lab later discovered a single source male DNA on the knife sheath button. There's a little snap right here, which police and prosecutors have said was later matched directly to Bryan Kohberger. The name and the expertise of the remaining state witnesses remains a mystery to the public. And on Wednesday, according to a public case summary, the Ada County District Judge Stephen Hippler issued an order sealing the full list, and prosecutors and the defense have previously agreed to seal the state's expert witness list. Now, Bryan Kohberger is next scheduled to appear in court before Judge Hippler on January 23rd for a hearing over the defense's efforts to suppress various pieces of evidence against Bryan Kohberger. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't like the evidence, the defense has to come up with a way to make it go away. You do that through a motion to suppress. That's how it's done. Was it obtained illegally? Was it done in violation of usually the Fourth Amendment? Somebody's right to privacy is normally it. I don't think the motions are going to prevail in this regard, but I am keeping an open mind, as you all should, and let's wait and see what comes out at the motions hearing. Remember, it's going to be all about that genealogical DNA evidence that the prosecution says, hey, we're not even going to use it, even though that was used to establish probable cause. A lot of interesting legal issues not going to be resolved just in the Kohberger case. Whatever happens in the Kohberger case, assuming he loses, it will be a huge appellate issue. Now, Bryan Kohberger's attorneys also allege that the police violated their client's rights against unreasonable searches and seizures protected by the Fourth Amendment, which the prosecution say, no, we didn't. Kohberger's capital murder trial is set to take place there in Boise this summer. And if all goes well, jury selection is supposed to begin on July 30th. Now, obviously, Bryan Kohberger is given the presumption of innocence, but if he is convicted, he could be sentenced to death. Next, no Christmas bonus? Hold my beer. A woman is facing felony charges after police say she allegedly assaulted an elderly woman who refused to pay her a $500 Christmas bonus. Please meet Heather Nelson. She is now facing more than half a dozen charges, including robbery, aggravated battery, forgery, fraud, and grand theft, according to the arrest affidavit. The sheriff's office says she deserves where she is right now, and that is in jail. According to a public spokesperson by the name of Todd Goodyear. Mr. Goodyear said the incident took place on Christmas Eve, where Miss Nelson physically assaulted an 83-year-old woman, leaving her with a swollen wrist after her demands for a Christmas bonus were denied. According to the spokesperson, Miss Nelson then snatched the woman's checkbook from the elderly woman's hand. She actually apparently took the check by force, took some Christmas cards that had money in them, took some debit and credit cards, left the residence, forged some signatures, and attempted to take quite a bit of money from this elderly woman. Now, Nelson was the elderly woman's house cleaner and apparently was quite the trusted employee until she wasn't. Now, Miss Nelson made the check out for $1,400. She also used the woman's credit card to pay her rent and bought a number of other items. Based on what she was using the monies for, she was apparently in some financial straits, the sheriff's spokesperson said, but maybe she just saw this as the only way possibly out of it. But to take advantage of an elderly senior woman is not how you do it, the police said. Now, Miss Nelson was arrested on January 7th, about 2 weeks after the assault. And according to the sheriff's department, the reason for the delay was because deputies had to follow the money trail and wait for the check to clear, for the charges to actually post, for the crime to actually take place. Needless to say, Miss Nelson remains in custody and has been unable to make her bond, probably because she has no money. Hence the reason why she was stealing other people's money. General rule of thumb here, legal principle, ladies and gentlemen. Don't take other people's things. Keep your hands off other people's property. Keep your hands off other people's person. Just don't do it, ladies and gentlemen. But that's not the way to do it. Miss Nelson, you're this close to being a dumb criminal of the day, but we saved that for somebody else. So you got that going for you at least. Next, violent people with mental health issues in New York committing crime. Imagine that. A man from the Bronx in New York, accused of randomly stabbing a 14-year-old boy to death as he walked to school, was thrown out of court Sunday after a rant about the White House, Al-Qaeda, and Satan. Who would expect anything less from somebody with mental illness like that? Anyway, this outburst came as a video surfaced of the suspect stabbing one of his neighbor's Ring doorbell camera with a huge blade knife back in November. Now, who is this mentally ill man? Waldo Mejia. He had been arrested and taken before the judge for allegedly killing teen Caleb Rios by sticking a knife into the boy's chest on East 138th Street on Friday morning. The suspect was also being arraigned on an unrelated stabbing where Mejia allegedly committed the crime about 2 weeks earlier. But the advisement hearing turned into a bit of chaos when the alleged killer at one point screamed that, "I am Satan," he screamed. He said, "Get ready to effing suffer." Anyway, the police had charged Mr. Mejia, who lives down the block from the teen's family and right across from the 40th Street precinct. The second-degree murder, attempted murder, and other offenses are for, obviously, these crimes. And he apparently has a lengthy criminal rap sheet along with a history of mental illness. He started yelling White House and Al-Qaeda while in court and apparently had some other antics. He's back there yapping now. He's just nuts. You can look at his face and see it, one of the deputies said. Now, Mejia's lawyer, who more likely was just there on covering the duty for advisements on the weekend, said that the court remanded his client and ordered a psychiatric examination where more than likely he's going to be found to be mentally ill, probably incompetent. And this attorney said, "Hey, man, I'm not defending this guy. Somebody else will be doing it in the future. I'm just here for the arraignment." He was obviously acting out. He was just screaming nonsense. That's good when your attorney is basically saying, "I want nothing to do with you as well." Anyway, Caleb Rios, the victim, was walking to school near Lincoln Avenue on 108th Street there in the Bronx about 9 a.m. when Mejia allegedly launched into this attack that prompted the NYPD Commissioner, Jessica Tisch, to say, "The state's legal system continues to fail us." As Caleb was apparently laying there dying from the wounds, he made a heartbreaking last phone call to his dad, according to the prosecutors from a statement made in court. He apparently called his father and told his father that he couldn't breathe and that he was scared, and his father heard him dying, the district attorney described in court. It is unfathomable to think about the level of this tragedy. Police obviously rushed the boy to the medical center, but he died from his injuries. The 14-year-old boy is dead, the prosecutor noted. A family is devastated, a city is in mourning, and the system that we have in place to deal with repeat offenders and individuals with severe mental health issues continues to fail all of us. Now, Mejia has also been charged with attempted murder for allegedly stabbing another man near Alexander Avenue and the 138th Street station in Mott Haven in the borough at about 3:50 a.m. on January 5th. During that attack, Mejia allegedly struck his 38-year-old victim with a sufficient force to cause the knife to fully perforate through the person's left arm and enter into said person's chest cavity, causing a laceration to the artery of his left arm, a significant loss of blood, and loss of consciousness requiring life-saving surgery. The suspect has had at least 4 more prior criminal cases, including back in May of 2017, arrest in which cops caught him with a loaded 9mm pistol, and again in 2019 on an arson charge, and for setting the lobby of his ex-girlfriend on fire. He later pled guilty to the arson charge down to a reckless endangerment and was granted a conditional discharge. Mejia was apparently well known in the neighborhood for terrorizing people and even stabbed one of their Ring doorbell cameras with a big knife back in November. Now, the resident who lives in that department declined to go into further details, but was happy to hear that his neighbor who tried to kick in his door is now in custody. The neighbor said that he's been scared for many, many days because of this guy. And when they grabbed him and what they did to his camera 3 days later in the building, he just got scared. So we all knew what happened to the kid. It could have happened to any of us, the neighbor said. And it could have happened to your wife. It could have happened to you. It could have happened to your own kids, your mother. That's the point, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, a young couple that lives directly below Mejia's said the alleged killer described him as effing insane. We're all terrified as him, the neighbors said. Every night at like 4 or 5, you hear him stomping around the apartment yelling, "Leave me the F alone." There you go, ladies and gentlemen. I know we used to be able to lock people up into basically mental institutions. We can't do that anymore. And they will commit crime. And I've seen it. I've seen people where it's ridiculous. We can go warehouse them in the Department of Corrections for $50,000, a year, or we can get them their medication, which is about $500 per month. And they're fine, assuming they take the medication. But if they don't take the medication, it's not doing anybody any good. What are you going to do? You can't force them. But there's some people, they're just, I hate to say it, they're just not wired right. And when they start committing crime like that, what do you do other than to obviously make sure they're competent, give them a fair trial, fair plea deal, and send them off to the Department of Corrections? But unless they're going to agree to take their medications or what have you, some people just can't function in society. What do you do with them? Let me know if you got the answer. Next, let's talk looting. A suspected looter who's disguised as a firefighter. Look, he looks a little shamefaced during his arrest in the area of the fires there in Pacific Palisades. Now, the unidentified man apprehended while wearing an out-of-date California fire jacket Saturday afternoon. His accomplice was arrested on suspicion of the same crime nearby, which came as the Los Angeles residents threatened to shoot anyone caught looting. Lots of photographs saying looters will be shot. I'm not sure that's an accurate statement of the law, ladies and gentlemen. You can shoot them, but do it at your own peril. Now, if I was on your jury, I would be totally fine with that. I think you should be able to use deadly force to protect property. Some people don't think so, but it's usually not your property that you don't think is worth defending when people say those statements. I've had too many things stolen from me over the years that, I'm okay with deadly force. I really, really am. And here you have people that are in a devastating situation and people are coming in trying to rob their places. I would give them license to shoot. The governor should say, if you shoot a looter, I'm going to pardon you if charges are brought. Anyway, like this pair, they were caught next to the iconic Getty Villa, which survived the Palisade fire so far with no issues. They were shamed on social media by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, but it's unclear if they were caught with any stolen property. Now, the other guy was apparently riding a scooter, and by the time the cops pulled up to him at the checkpoint, tell the deputies they'd already detained the other guy, and only one of them was wearing a fire uniform. Now, the California Department of Forestry changed its name to the California Fire back in 2007, and for the jacket he was wearing was obviously a clue that he was up to no good, apparently. The apprehension of the suspected looters came as the Los Angeles residents erected signs threatening to shoot looters, with 68 people so far arrested for the crime of looting. Is it really even a crime, though, in California if it's under $950, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, I don't know. Why are you getting so upset about it, ladies and gentlemen? It's just stuff, right? It's just stuff. Guess all of a sudden it gets serious when it's your stuff. It's okay when they're stealing other people's stuff. Let that sink in. Anyway, the police have vowed to prosecute looters to the fullest extent of the law. A misdemeanor and a ride home, probably a summons, maybe arrested. But yes, we'll wait and see. Just keep your hands off your property. If you don't have a home there, you have no reason to be there. And if you're stealing other people's crap, you should be shot. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. I know that sounds terrible, but it's probably true. Next, neighbor disputes. A couple is facing 14 years in prison for attempting to kill their neighbor over a parking dispute. I've told you before, ladies and gentlemen, over and over again, neighborhood disputes are the worst. I basically won't take a neighborhood dispute these days because somebody says, I want to get a protection order or something like that. Nope, don't do it. It's always going to wind up in criminal court, I guarantee you. Just as it did in this case. Anyway, the Queens District Attorney, a woman by the name of Melinda Katz, announced on January 8th that the married couple of Arturo Cuevas and Daisy Barrera pled guilty to second-degree attempted murder after stabbing and beating their neighbor back in March of 2023. They are scheduled to be sentenced on January 22nd and will face up to 14 years in prison. According to the prosecutors, back on March 17th of 2023, Wilson Lakota returned to his home and parked his car when the defendants, armed with weapons, approached Mr. Lakota and attacked him. Cuevas reportedly stabbed Lakota with a folding knife numerous times, and Barrera beat him with the head with a metal bat. The couple reportedly knocked the victims to the ground before Cuevas continued to stomp on his body, and Barrera struck him in the head with the bat. The victim's girlfriend saw her boyfriend from their apartment window and went out there to help him out. According to the district attorney's office, Barrera also struck the victim with a bat in her arm and continued hitting Mr. Lakota. Police responded, and the defendants retreated to their apartments. And needless to say, they were involved in a little standoff with police. Anyway, Mr. Lakota underwent surgery for severe brain trauma, and he had to have part of his skull removed and needed to be induced into a medically induced coma. His girlfriend also required medical treatment for her injuries. Now, a prosecutor said that Cuevas and Barrera had an argument with Lakota over a parking space nearly a year before the incident. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Beating your neighbor up and stabbing them over a parking space. I mean, unless you own that parking space, I still would not advise you to go stab anybody. What is going on in the world? I know this has always gone on, but I just don't think that I have seen this much violence, at least not in my 30 years of practicing law, ladies and gentlemen. It is crazy. Next, this day in legal history, on January 13th, 1794, the Flag Act of 1794, that's right, President George Washington approved a measure adding 2 stars and 2 stripes to the American flag following the admission of Vermont and Kentucky to the Union. And then on this date in 1997, O.J. Simpson was found liable. That's right, a civil jury found O.J. Simpson liable for the wrongful death of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. Obviously, this kind of highlights the difference between the criminal and civil law, how liability can be established even when criminal guilt was not. And I don't believe Nicole Brown Simpson's family or Ron Goldman's parents have ever been paid a dime by O.J. Simpson, except maybe now the estate may have to pay a little bit, but I know they're fighting that as well. And then on this day back in 2021, that's right, the second impeachment of Donald Trump. That's right, Donald Trump became the first U.S. president to be impeached twice, charged with incitement and insurrection following the Capitol riots. Obviously, the impeachment underscored the importance of this constitutional process for addressing alleged abuse of powers. Obviously, he was not removed from office, not once, not twice, neither. And now he will be the president again in 7 days, ladies and gentlemen. We'll probably have this day in legal history where he pardons all the January 6 people. I've met a lot of those people because I potentially was going to get hired by a couple of them. Some of them were little old ladies. Kid you not. Little old ladies, ladies and gentlemen. Commit violence, that's wrong. Stroll through the Capitol, the People's House, not so wrong. Anyway, next, our dumb criminal of the day. A Florida police officer was apparently watching some pornography on his phone when he slammed his police car into the car that had stopped in front of him. Now, this is all according to an internal affairs report that accused the deputy of lying about the incident. You know what they say, usually what you did is not that big a deal until you lie about it. So what we know is about 1:45 p.m., a crash occurred 2 months ago in Lake County there in Florida, and it prompted the police officer to resign his post in the midst of a review of the professional standards. Tristan McComber initially offered various explanations for his distractions while driving. He claimed to have been on the phone with another officer at the time of the crash and contended that the police car must have had some mechanical issues. Anyway, he would go on to claim that he'd been exchanging texts with fellow officers as well. However, investigators reviewed the dash cam video and body-worn cameras that contradicted the deputy's stories. The video recorded in the cruiser's steering wheel airbag deployed, and McComber telling the 63-year-old female motorist who was that he hit, "My brakes locked up." Anyway, a Florida Highway Patrol report prepared at the time of the crash stated that McComber was inattentive and drove in a careless and negligent manner. The report estimated damage to the police car at about $10,000 and to the other car about $5,000. McComber eventually admitted he was on the phone looking at inappropriate pictures, which further described as pornographic materials like boobs and whatnot. I think that's a legal term of art. Anyway, the investigators added that McComber stated that he was looking at images that contained nudity. As for why he said that his car had a defective anti-lock braking system, McComber admitted that, it was just mere deflection than a genuine reason for the vehicle's crash. And when McComber's hesitancy to admit the pornography viewing was a lying by omission, ladies and gentlemen, and the internal affairs probe found that McComber was in violation of several professional standards, including departure from the truth and prohibited use of an electronic device. Anyway, he became a deputy only back in 2021. As of right now, former Deputy McComber has not been charged with a crime. But Mr. McComber, you are our dumb criminal of the day. The lesson learned today is not that big a deal until you lie about it. Had you just said you were inattentive, it would have been written up and moved along. But you lied about it. Shame on you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for you today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.